Well, hello, it's Danny, and I have the Marshall Woburn 3 with me, and I know a lot of you are pretty excited about this. We're going to compare the specs of the Marshall Woburn 3 to the previous generations. We're going to look at the build configuration, the speaker configuration, the Bluetooth technology coming up, how this thing connects to a TV, and then we're going to compare the audio of this next to the other ones and see how far we've come. So in terms of controls for the Woburn 3, you can definitely tell the engineers at Sound Industries were trying to bring back some of the highlights of the first generation, including the mechanical toggle switch, which is just a nice touch. In this case, they finally added a track skip button, essentially. Everything else is pretty much the same. Now, on the Woburn 2, all you'll find is just a pause and play button. And the first one doesn't even have that. It just has volume and it's all mechanical or analog essentially. In terms of inputs, you do get one more input with this one. You get the wonderful HDMI input, which we'll talk about later, but you also get your RCA input if you're doing record playing and a traditional aux input. So you have all the options you need if you're an audiophile. This is actually the lightest version of all the Woburns. It comes in at 17.4 pounds. The previous Woburn tune was about 19 pounds, and a lot of that is kind of because they essentially replaced the back on it with plastic, which is not a bad thing. It's totally fine. It doesn't affect the sound to my ears at all. They just made it a little bit lighter, but it's still a heavy speaker. This is the first Woburn that's considered a three-way configuration versus a two-way. So unlike the Woburn 2 that just had two 50-watt woofers and then some tweeters in it, this actually has just one 90-watt woofer, two 15-watt mids, and two 15-watt tweeters. So the addition of those mid speakers allows for this thing to more accurately reproduce sounds in the mid-range while controlling the treble and the bass, which is huge. Ironically, the Woburn 1, which is highly regarded to be one of the best sounding Woburns out there versus the 2, that one actually only has one woofer and two tweeters. So it actually has the least amount of speakers. So it's not always how many speakers you have, it's what you're doing with them that matters. The way these speakers in here are configured is essentially it's made to have a wider range, so you can place it anywhere and it's supposed to kind of chase you around the room no matter where you're at, versus the Woburn 2 or the 1 had some more of a sweet spot in them based on the speaker direction and how they were configuring it. Marshall alludes in their video that they're going to be able to do multi-stream and broadcast with over-the-air updates to Bluetooth that's going to get better and better. Essentially what they're saying is there's a new LE audio, low energy audio. The Marshall Woburn 3 has the chipset inside of it to be compatible with that when it's released, but essentially you're going to be able to have much better audio quality with less data. You're going to be able to multi-stream, which means that these things are going to be able to pair amongst each other more easily and have better stereo pairing, like the timing's going to work better is what they're claiming. Well, Marshall has decided essentially that LE audio is the future, and that's the way they're going to go, and that's what's going to allow them to multi-stream. So if you have the Woburn 2, for example, and you notice that you weren't able to couple those with these guys, it's because the technology inside of them is completely different. The Woburn 2 doesn't have LE audio capability, whereas these will. So I heard a rumor like July 13th, something's supposed to be released for this technology. I'm not sure, but we will see. So if you are interested in multi-speaker streaming, like Wi-Fi features where you can play it throughout your house, this LE audio thing derived from Bluetooth technology sounds like it's going to enable a lot of that. So I know that's kind of creepy and technical, and I did the best I could derive when I was reading about it, but it sounds like there's a lot of significant upgrades that are going to happen with this new technology. It's like a new standardization coming from the Bluetooth company. I don't know. They're not a company. They're like a standard something. All right, so you notice that little HDMI input they have on the Woburn here. Well, you can hook it up to your TV, obviously. I think it's really dependent on the TV you have. And the reason I say that is because I tried this on both TVs in my house, and one of them I had disastrous results with, and the other was just fine. My main TV is an LG 4K. Whenever I hook this up to the HDMI port on the HDMI ARC, I could not get it to output to the speaker. And I had to keep trying, and I tested it, and my soundbar was getting audio just fine from the same configuration. When I plugged in this thing, it just would not work. I actually got it to work once, but I had to like power it off and power it back on, and basically I never got it to be able to work again. If you have an LG TV, I would not count on being able to use the HDMI from this in that TV. However, when I went to my Vizio TV and plugged this thing in via the HDMI, it worked perfectly. In fact, I didn't even have to set anything up. It just automatically detected it and started working. So if you have a Vizio and you want to use your Bluetooth speaker, I think you're safe there. But yeah, don't use LG. The other thing I tested was the audio delay quality. Now, what I did is I did actually end up hooking this thing up to my LG TV, but I did it via Bluetooth instead. I think there's like a slight delay. But again, with the LE audio technology coming out, that might be an improvement later on. I wouldn't count on it. However, through the HDMI port, I detected absolutely no delay whatsoever. The test was perfect. I also tried Bluetooth from the Woburn 2. Couldn't even get it working, so I don't know what's wrong. That speaker works fine when I normally connect to Bluetooth, but for whatever reason with that LG TV, it didn't like it. So don't recommend your Woburn 2 for Bluetooth up to a TV. However, the original Woburn was just fine for Bluetooth. Some of you are asking if you have to touch this speaker, do you have to like actuate a knob to wake it back up after the standby mode? Well, I can tell you definitively, when you have the HDMI plugged up to my Vizio, as soon as the TV turned on, this thing turned on automatically. With the Bluetooth, it also turned itself on, so I didn't have any problems there. And now for the audio test. I'm going to be comparing this to all of the Woburn speakers. I've got some live music that I got a license for, so let's take a listen and see which one we like the most.
Let's see if you know this one.
Memory, your lifeline is burning rose. Recover the damage, bring it on the go. Follow the breeze, just like a summer song. We stay there forever. I try to remember.
Let me put it like this. Two of them have a different kind of sound, and one of them just sounds objectively worse than the others. The Marshall 3 sounds amazing. It actually sounded like it was distorting a little bit with this live song to my ears, but that could have just been the live music I particularly chose, because I've listened to it with other music, like a little bit more pop, and it's handled it just fine. But overall, the sound quality is wonderful, and it made me smile just listening to it. Like, my litmus test is not scientific. It's just like, does it feel like it's breathing the soul of the music out the way it should sound? And yes, it very much so does sound like that. And the Marshall 1 still sounds really good, and it still gets incredibly loud. For my take, the Marshall Woburn 2 sounds like the worst of the bunch. It just sounds muddier, and it's kind of sad to say that, because like, I want you guys to go buy the cheaper Marshall Woburn 2 when it starts becoming available more readily, but I don't know if I can recommend it. It doesn't sound nearly as good to my ears as like the Woburn 3. The Woburn 3 just sounds way better. I think if I had to choose amongst any of these speakers to like take with me into the future, I would probably take the Woburn 3 just because of the updated technology, and I really like the sound. I'm willing to take the better technology over the classic one just because the classic one sounds great, but I kind of like the looks a little bit more of this one with the added features. So yeah, best value of all of these, honestly, I'm going to say that you should pony up the extra money and get the Woburn 3. It's really that good. It's like they took the Woburn 1 and everything we liked about it and they repackaged it into an updated version essentially. Particularly obsessed with sound quality and you just want a good speaker, the Woburn 2 will probably be just fine. And you can probably start finding it for cheaper is what I suspect. Hopefully it's not sold out right now, but I do have some links below that you can use if you want to find it. So anyways, thanks so much for watching. This was a lot of fun. I'll see you later. Bye. There you go. Doesn't have the rock and roll noise when it starts up. It's loud.